Hello, and welcome to Getting It.
The conversation where we try to understand life just that little bit more.
My name's Dan.
And my name is Saban.
And we're both medical students based in London.
And in this episode, we discuss a few topics brought up in a book I've been reading recently called The Almanack of Naval by Erik Jorgensen. I hope I pronounced that correctly. In particular, discussing the topics of wealth accumulation, leverage, and learning. We only make it a few pages in, so we plan on going through and discussing some of the mental models mentioned later on in the book in a future episode or two. So Dan, how you doing?
I'm not doing too badly, thank you, Saban. How about you?
Not too bad either. This is just going to become our thing where we just reply with the exact same thing every single time.
In life, you always have to give the most neutral response when someone asks, how are you? I'm doing fine, thank you.
Yeah.
Unless something incredible has happened.
Yeah, that's true. So you've been back at uni on placements on firms. How's that going so far, especially with COVID and all of that?
It's really good, actually. They've really made a lot of space for us. And nowadays, because medical students are considered essential workers, it's quite nice. We're allowed to be part of the team, and the doctors have noticed that they can make us do the sort of rudimentary tasks that no one else wants to do. So I've been doing a lot of that, and it's really good. A lot of good learning opportunities. So surprisingly, despite it being a bit tiring, it's really enjoyable so far. So I'm just lucky to be out there. How about you? What have you been up to in the last week or two?
Just making videos, really, or procrastinating making the videos. I'm just spending a lot of time just thinking about what I'm going to do, and then there's so much resistance in actually trying to do it that a lot of the time I fail, and then I just go on to the next day and try and make it. But I've made significant progress now, so I'm slowly getting there. What rotation are you on right now?
So I'm doing obs and gynae, so obstetrics and gynecology. So looking at mainly pregnancy and other long-term conditions in women's health, and also obviously more acute presentations, everything ranging from problems in pregnancy to problems that women get later in life. And it has been a learning curve because it's my first block of this year, and at the same time, more enjoyable than I sort of predicted, because I'm very set on cardiology. I'm a big fan of that speciality, and I really hope to go into that one day. So I think sometimes I'm at risk of becoming a bit single-minded, and I don't give enough consideration to other specialities. And now being in the speciality every single day, seeing lots and lots of patients, it's been really good fun. And that's what I sort of mean when I say exceeded expectations. And and I also have a lot of respect now for the process of pregnancy, and also almost like fear. Not that I'm ever going to become pregnant, but
who knows? Technology's moving fast.
It is moving pretty fast, but maybe not that fast. Anyway, yeah. So
have you delivered any babies?
Not personally. I've been in delivery and I've seen babies being delivered. Some people, it depends on what surgeon you get, really, or not a surgeon, but it depends on what person you have while the C-sections are going on for C-sections. Some doctors really like you getting stuck in. They kind of put you in the hot seat and they make you, go right up and be involved in, holding down the bladder or helping find massaging the uterus. That's one thing that some students have had to do after birth to prevent hemorrhage. And it's for me, it's mainly just been a case of just watching and trying to assimilate information and try and keep up.
And just a lot of probably listening to screaming and stuff.
A lot of babies crying. It's become sort of drowned out now when I enter those wards.
Just the frequencies, you just don't hear them anymore.
No, I've accustomed to it already. I can block it out. But anyway, I know today, in front of me, so obviously we're not in the same place again. In front of me, you're sharing a screen with me, a Zoom screen, and I'm very interested to understand what I'm looking at. I'm looking at what appears to be highlights, notes. They all seem very interesting, but I'm hoping that you can shed some light on what is in front of me at the moment. Yeah,
so what I kind of have planned for this episode is just going through a book that came out very recently, a few days ago, I think. And it's quite insightful. It's quite a fun read. And it's just, interesting to read in terms of the mental models and stuff that are explained in it. And we're just going to go through some of the highlights that I've made in the first half of the book and see what our opinions are and just discuss them in general and see if we can develop our own mental models further. So the book is called The Almanack of Naval Ravikant. I don't know if pronounce that last name right. I should, because I'm Pakistani and it's an Indian name. So hopefully that was pretty close. And this isn't written by him. It was written by Eric. I think his last name begins with a J. I can't remember, but I'll put the link in the show notes if you want to read the book. And it's also very cheap because they're not trying to make profit from it. So I think it's like 75p on Kindle, or if you go on the website, you can just get it for free. So definitely worth reading. So basically, it's a collection of tweets and interviews and stuff like that from the person called Naval. And he's a bit famous on Twitter, I guess. If you've been on Twitter for any amount of time, you've probably come across a quote or tweet by him, just it being retweeted or just quoted. Yeah, so he was born in India, and I think he migrated to the US when he was around 9 and went through the education system. Didn't have the best household situation. I think his parents got a divorce and stuff. So yeah, all the troubles that come with that, and then just trying to make his way and, become successful and whatnot. Because I think it was his dad had a pharmacy degree, but it wasn't accepted or recognized in the US. So then he had to, work a low skill job and whatnot. So it was a struggle in that sense. He had to kind of work his way up, and, he just developed his own thought process and certain mental models. And he's known in Silicon Valley as, he founded AngelList. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
All right. So it's basically just a platform where startups can get angel investing, so very early investing, so they can get, start their company and, get the cash flow that they need to be able to scale up their business. And it's also a platform where you can find startups to work at. So it's all about startups and angel investing and whatnot. And I think he's invested in over 200 companies at an early stage. So companies like Uber, Twitter and stuff. So he's been early like angel investors into those companies.
So he is an investor himself?
Yes. I can't exactly remember what he studied, but he's just basically in the whole tech, computers and tech side of things.
What's his personality like? So you said he's quite vocal on Twitter. Is he sort of quite argumentative? Does he kind of start beef, or what's his...
No. So
what's his shtick?
Yeah, I think a few years ago, basically, he's just started tweeting his personal views and mental models about certain things. Just very nice, quotable things. So say if he learned something, then he just tweet it, try and condense it into one or two tweets and just post it out. And, just kind of built... He was already fairly well known in the Silicon Valley fintech, or not fintech, but, startup kind of area. So it just kind of expanded out like that. And yeah, now he comes across as like a Twitter philosopher to a certain extent. But anyway, his tweets and interviews and stuff, there's a lot of insight that anyone can take from. And I guess this stuff kind of comes from experience. So this dude basically compiled a lot of that into a book, and we're just going to go through some of those highlights and see what it's like.
I have just two more questions. One, sorry if you already said it, but what part of India does he come from?
India, Delhi, I believe.
Okay. And then the second thing is, sorry again if I missed it, but what's his age roughly?
Good question. I think he's around 39. Let me quickly...
Okay, so he's fairly young. He's not like he's
not dude. Super old. I think he's mid 40s latest.
This is good. I want to see what he looks like. Oh wow, former CEO of AngelList. So is he a multi-million? I suppose he must be.
Yeah, probably. So he talks a lot about money. So the book is split up into sections and mental models for different sections. So the first one is wealth, and then second part is happiness. I haven't gone past that section yet, so I don't know if there are any other things that are discussed. But you can see he's invested into Uber, Twitter, even Notion and stuff from a really early stage, like before they were public and stuff. So yeah, what's his age? Oh, it doesn't say. Whatever. Anyway, middle-aged basically. So I'll start off just by reading through some of the highlights that I've made, and then we'll discuss them if they're worth discussing, and we'll go from there. So the first few highlights I don't think are too deep to discuss. The first one is getting rich is about knowing what to do, who to do it with, and when to do it. Yeah, I guess it's not very profound, I guess. Go to the next one. You should not grind at a lot of hard work until you figure out what you should be working on. Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting.
I do agree with that. You should not grind at a lot of hard work until you figure out what you should be working on. And the first one, again, getting rich is about knowing what to do, who to do it with, and when to do it. Getting rich isn't about knowing what to do. And that kind of is the same thing as the second one, isn't it? You should not grind at a lot of hard work until you figure out what you should be working on. I think it's true. Obviously, I'm very young and naive in many ways, I'm sure. So my opinions will change a lot. But I don't know, sharing opinions is the best way to think about them, assess them, and potentially change them. And just from my experience so far, do you mind if I interject quickly and talk before we go on? I've always thought in some ways it's good to know, if you're certain of it, to choose something and go towards that, because you can make every micro decision in your life, you can gear towards that. So an example for me personally that is clear is the cardiology thing. I knew from when I was 13, if I think at this point most of our listeners know us personally, but if you don't know me, when I was 13 I was quite ill, and I had 2 heart attacks, and I had open heart surgery, and it was a long process. And from then, basically, I was very keen on cardiology. I just really enjoyed that experience. So going into medical school, I remember even in the interviews talking a bit about that and explaining that I really like cardiology. I'd often read about it, and I didn't know much from a science perspective, but I really liked it. Anyway, going into medical school, every decision I've made for every SSC, so every small essay project, or for my intercalated BSc last year, I studied cardiovascular sciences, and any projects I do outside of uni, I try and do a bit outside of uni in cardiology, and any project I'm doing is cardiology based. And again, so for example, this year doing a quality improvement project, I've chosen a cardiac topic again. And I think because I'm very set on it, knowing early on what I want to do, I'm able to push ahead in that career from the start, and that will hopefully help me later on, having sort of got a head start. On the contrary, I don't know if that's the right word there. On the other side, if you don't know what you're doing and you just decided to blindly commit to something, that is unwise, obviously. But what I'm saying here is, if you do know you like something, it's definitely worth working on it. But I suppose that's what the second quote is saying. It says, don't grind at a lot of hard work until you figure out what you should be working on. So does that mean stay broad?
Not necessarily, I think. So this is all coming from a very businessy perspective, at least in this first section. I think what he's getting at is the whole hustle culture you're seeing more and more recently, where everyone's like, yeah, side hustle, man. Just your hustle bros kind of thing.
Rise and grind Twitter.
Exactly, yeah. However, a lot of people are just blindly hustling, spending a lot of time doing stuff which isn't actually getting much output. So you're just doing a lot of hard work and hustling for no reason, without any direction, really. You just see the next thing, everyone's drop shipping. Let me start drop shipping, hustling towards that. But you don't even know what you actually have to... Okay, say if you're just going to follow the trend and start drop shipping or something back when it was a craze.
What is drop shipping?
So drop shipping is... it's, the platforms like Teespring, where you can upload your own design to Teespring and they'll print shirts. But so usually the classic way of doing it is you buy a bunch of shirts, you print them yourself, and then you put them on a marketplace and sell them. So you have to do everything. But drop shipping is basically, you don't hold any of the inventory. That's all dealt by a third party. So you just upload the design to it and you just let it sit there. And when someone orders it, then Teespring take care of getting the shirt, the size, printing it and sending it to them.
So everyone was doing that?
It was a craze, over the past few years. And people were just trying to get into it because you can make a lot of money through it. And you can do it all from home. You don't have to deal with all the inventory stuff. But say you're just following that craze. And even if you are, you have to know exactly what you're doing within that craze to actually get proper output. Otherwise, you're just going to be hustling for no reason and you won't have a specific edge in anything. But the whole thing you said about focusing down on what you want to do, he talks a lot about this later when he talks about specific knowledge and going down certain hobbies and passions and stuff. So I think when we get to the specific knowledge part, it will be quite interesting at that point, because I think we'll resonate with a lot of those thoughts that he's kind of put down in this book.
I know you've probably got loads of stuff to cover, so I'm sorry, but there's one more thing I want to quickly add, because I don't know if we'll veer off from it, is that there is a sort of subset of the internet in our age group anyway, of that rise and grind mentality, where people work really hard and it's about becoming extremely productive. But it does irk me a little bit, because it's, why are you being productive? What is the end goal? Even, for example, if someone goes to Cambridge, they study medicine and they work so hard to be exact top of their year, top decile, and you have that mentality throughout your whole life, why? I want to understand what is the goal with that, because you're sacrificing quite a lot to do it. It's obviously a good thing to have, and it's a good asset on any application you have, but what is the end goal, and why do you want to do so well in life? Do you want to do so well in life to prove to others that you've done well? What is the internal value of doing so well? Honestly, it's something that defies understanding in some ways, and sometimes I have to keep checking myself. What are the reasons for doing these things? So yeah, it just is sort of reiterating that first or second quote where it's like, just knowing why you're doing something, and you have to know yourself, I think. You have to know what your values are and what you expect from life. And yeah, so when I see people blindly working extremely hard to do very, very well because it's just been drummed into them, I just hope that the reasons are correct for doing it, because it is permissible in some ways, but it depends on your intention. Anyway, sorry, next one, please.
Yeah, no, that was the entire thing. It's all about the intention that you have going forward. So yeah, you say you want to achieve a certain goal. Yeah, you're going to have to work hard to do it. But a lot of people don't have that long-term intention set, really, in terms of what they want to achieve, and making sure that all of their hard work is going towards that intention. I think it's quite spirally for most people. Working hard for the next short-term thing. There's an exam coming up. I'm just going to work and nail on that. What are you going to gain from that exam? What is that exam contributing to your final intention, your end goal? So I think that's the main thing. And just as a side note, we aren't trying to come across as philosophers or people who have massive experience in everything. We're just kind of discussing our own perspectives and opinions to try and improve our own opinions and, change our mental models if...
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, okay. And the whole thing about intention, so what you're kind of talking about is that a lot of people are just kind of playing the status game, really, where they just want to do really well because they don't really have a legit reason why. And if you don't have a legit reason why, you're almost just playing a status game, just even if you don't want to think you are. So yeah, he kind of gets onto that as well later on. So it will be interesting. But yeah, we should probably speed up at this rate since we're second page in or something. So next thing is seek wealth, not money or status. Wealth is having assets that earn while you sleep. Money is how we transfer time and wealth. Status is your place in the social hierarchy.
So I'm going to repeat it one more time, just so I get my head around it. I know there are quite a lot, but seek wealth, not money or status. Wealth is having assets that earn while you sleep. Okay. Money is how we transfer time and wealth. Well, I don't really understand that. Money is how we transfer time and wealth.
So how do most people make money? They transfer time to gain money, right? You are working for a certain amount of hours. You are paid per time, right?
Yeah.
However, true wealth, basically in this kind of beginning section, he gets to the point where you can't actually become wealthy, become rich, become financially independent unless you invest your asset or invest your money into assets that earn and appreciate over time, even when you don't have to put any time into it at that point. Just the whole kind of passive income kind of thing. So say you invest in stocks or something, basically you want to own some kind of business, right? Some kind of equity in a business, because if you own a certain part of a business, you are accruing the money that the company gains from the people who work in that company spend time to work on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so I think that's what it's kind of getting at. Whereas a lot of people just kind of want, just having loads of money is just a status thing rather than actual wealth, because sometimes people's wealth are tied up in different assets. Say like a lot of my dad's net worth is tied up in this house. It doesn't have to be stocks and stuff, but yeah, money is just a unit that we transfer things. It's like gold. It's a unit of transfer, right? It's just these days it's money rather than gold. Let's just kind of skip through this finance stuff, because I think the meat of it gets to it. The meat of it comes when it starts talking about knowledge and that kind of stuff, because that's kind of what we're into. Yeah, so this is basically what it's saying. So you're not going to get rich renting out your time. You must own equity, a piece of a business to gain your financial freedom. Okay, fine. Let's play iterated games. All returns in life, whether in wealth, relationships, or knowledge, come from compound interest. Yes, compound interest. It's a huge thing.
Repeat it.
Yeah, so play iterated games. All returns in life, whether in wealth, relationships, or knowledge, come from compound interest. You know what compound interest is? I'm assuming most people know what compound interest is, but I don't think many people understand how compound interest actually affects our lives, how it actually works, and that it's not just a mathematical phenomenon. It's just in everything we do. I read on Twitter once someone said, to compound interest, compound your interests. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
So that's a basis from a knowledge kind of perspective, right? If you want to be well-rounded and learn a lot, you have to compound your interests in the fact you have to spread out. Whereas a lot of people hyper-specialize. Yeah, you have a lot of knowledge in there, but how applicable is it at that point? You can't really compound it further. You need multiple things coming in to be able to compound it.
I think it's very true with regard to, for example, social interaction. I think something that really helps the ability to interact with other people or to meet new people is literally having met lots of people from different backgrounds. And for you and I, if we don't work at it, or for you and me, if we don't work at it, the majority of people we're meeting are people our age, often our own gender, our own religious background, our own ethnicity. If you put in, it sounds odd to say, but if you put in hours meeting people from all walks of life and all ages, if you know a few elderly people, if you know a few people from a completely different culture to yours, Far East Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, South America, and you get to know people from different parts of the world, you understand different ways of thinking, you're compounding your understanding of how to interact with different people from many different backgrounds and different situations. People with illnesses, people who are extremely successful, who are more humble, and I don't know, if you can broaden that spectrum, you become a lot better at meeting a new person because you just literally have more experience in it. That's just a very random example because it's just something that recently in hospital I've been meeting people from so many different backgrounds and from so many different language backgrounds, and it does make me think about how I don't know, it's compounded. The more you do it, the more it compounds itself.
Yeah, and just to kind of put the power of compounding into effect, I think Einstein said if there was an eighth wonder of the world, it would be compound interest, because everything is based on compound interest. Any kind of success comes from compounding. Everyone is always saying, oh, just improve by 1%, always just try to improve a little. People don't really understand that, okay, if you improve 1% every single day, you're not just improve at the end of the year, you haven't just improved by 365%. Because compounding, to improve by 1%, you have to take on what stage you're at the day before. So if you increase by 1% on day one of the year, you are now at 1.01. And now the thing is, the next day you are now going to add 1% to the 1.01. So it goes in increasing increments every single time. So at the end of the year, if you increase by anything, your wealth, your knowledge, your social interactions, anything by 1% every single day, do you know what the total return is at the end of the year?
A fair amount.
It's 37x. 3,700% improvement if you improve 1% every day. Now, improving 1% every day is difficult because as you improve more, it's harder to get that 1% more because each 1% becomes greater, right? But it adds up. It adds up a lot. Like Warren Buffett, if you look at the graphs of Warren Buffett's wealth, it took him like 15 years to gain his first million. And then it took him 5 years to gain his next million. And then the next year he gained like 2 billion. Then the next year he gained 10 billion. So his net worth graph is just completely flat until his last 10 years of life, where it just went straight up because that's what exponentials look like. And people don't understand. If you look at every rich person, they're really old because they're just letting compounding do the job. They don't have to do much after that. Obviously, there's a lot of background in terms of knowledge and being smart with their decisions and stuff, but each smart decision gets compounded, right? Which then leads to compounds in every other walk of life.
And so for me, I'm trying to think about this and apply it to my own life. And at the moment, my main goal is to be rounded and get better at the things I enjoy. So outside of medicine, that will be the ones that I've discussed before. Languages, music are two good examples, maybe tennis as well, sport, golf. And from my own journey of improvement, I've got two things that I would say are extremely important and do tie into the compound interest aspect of things, which is consistency. If you do it every day, I know it's very common knowledge. You have to do something consistently to get better. But I almost will become obsessive about something. So in the last few months with the Mandarin, it is a case of literally just never getting out of that mental mode. I describe it as almost when you're riding a bike and you have to put in a lot of effort to get the wheels turning for the first few, I don't know, dozen meters. After a while, you don't have to work as hard. The bike is in gear and it's moving and it's in motion. Keep your brain in that motion the whole time. All day,
Yes.
every day. Whatever you're doing, talk to yourself in Mandarin. Constantly try and translate everything you're thinking out loud. Have a dictionary on the go. Keep going back to those words. Anyone you know who speaks that language, pester them and seek out those people. Seek out opportunities to practice it more. Never get out of that mode. That's what I mean by consistency. It's not just everyone knows that you should do something a lot to get better at it and you have to put in the hours. It's not just that. You have to be incredibly consistent with it to make, and it compounds and it compounds and it compounds. And that brings in the second thing, which is context. Every time you use a new word, every time you apply a new principle, you're putting it into more and more context and you understand it better. So yeah, any aspect of life that you want to improve, it has to be more than just doing it every day. It has to become almost the way you think in some ways, and whether that be music or whatever you're interested in. I think that's the way you have to do it if you want to get really good and you want to put in an investment that returns more and more every day you do it.
Yeah, exactly. So with learning specifically, it's more sigmoidal, right? Because there's a maximum capacity you can get to
Yeah.
in a certain field depending on technological limits and just time and stuff. So yeah, okay, doing 1% every day is just quite long. So it becomes quite, if you just try and do 1%, if you try to learn 1% of Mandarin every single day and just improve that 1%, yeah, you'll be 37 times better at the end of the year. But you could have been a lot higher if you just take advantage of that sigmoid learning curve. The first few percent, you might only, for the first week or so, only really be able to learn 1% because you have to get into it, right? It's fairly shallow at the beginning, the beginning of the sigmoid curve. But once you've learned the basics, right, the basic verbs like to do and stuff like that, to do, I am, that stuff, the very basics, then you hit the steep part of the curve. And when you're on that steep part, you're not just gaining 1%, you're probably gaining 10% a day at that point. And you want to stay on that as much as you can and compound that as quickly as possible. So then you can get to the plateau part at the top end really quickly within a few months, but it requires focus to take focus in terms of being consistent for a short period of time, but spending a lot of time in it, investing a lot to make basically the greatest growth, to try and create the greatest growth rate in the shortest amount of time. And then, yeah, you can probably get to 37x in 3, 5, 6 months or something, rather than the whole year.
I think it's incredibly inefficient to do something once a week. You know, enroll in a class where you go once a week. In my opinion, I'm open to being proven wrong, but I really don't think that brings you the most returns or the most benefit. No way at all, because you're having to constantly get your brain back into gear. Do it all the time. And once you've reached that point of the sigmoidal curve where you're increasing quickly, you've gone past that bottom phase, there's almost no excuse. Because by that point, every time you go and sit down to do something and you see that you've improved, that should spur you on to do more. And every time you go and sit down, you clearly see that you're getting better and better. That's the returns that you wanted at the start. That was the returns from the investment you're already receiving. You can apply it straight away. So there's no excuse. Once you've started something that you're passionate about and you've gone past that difficult phase at the start, whatever that passion may be, whatever that goal may be, you have to keep going at it. Be incredibly consistent and keep putting it into context. Keep putting it into more and more context and you get better.
Yeah.
I don't want to say exponentially, but very quickly.
It can be exponential for a period, I guess. But yeah, I think one of the best ways to do that is basically just make whatever you're doing, learning, whatever, just don't make it an option to do it. Just make it a necessity, right? On the weekend, we always struggle to wake up early and stuff. But when it comes to the work days, we get up on time. We end up getting to work on time. Well, I hope we do at least. Why? Because it's not an option to be late. It's not an option to just be, no, I'm not going to do it today. You have to, right? So you do it. If you just make it not an option that I'm going to do X and I'm not going to give myself the option, give yourself some kind of punishment for it. A lot of people say, financial things on it where if they don't do it consistently for a certain amount of time, then say they've transferred £1,000 to their friend and then that friend gets to keep the money. But otherwise, if they're successful and keep at it, then they'll get the money back. So Yeah.
I have a controversial, but I don't know if it's controversial. I hope it's not. But I have a point, which is something I really believe, and it's if the thing you're doing requires discipline, I don't think you're doing it right. So, say it's tennis. If you're having to be disciplined and you're having to tell yourself to go down to the court every day and do it, I don't think that's right, because the things that I've done where I've got a lot better at it and I've become almost obsessive with it, once you've got into that period where, you know, the bike, the wheels are turning, it's not because you're in that mode. You should be constantly in that mode. The discipline is required to drag yourself into that mode. But if you're in that mode all the time, why do you need discipline? That's just the way you're thinking. So if you're constantly working in Mandarin almost all day, every day, it shouldn't need discipline. It should reach a point where it's just part of your routine and it's enjoyable. That improvement is enjoyable. So anything that I do where I really am pushing myself and I would call it a passion, almost all of it is not something that requires discipline. In fact, when I'm doing other stuff, I want to be doing this. So for example, if I haven't done Mandarin for a few days, it's happened in the last few weeks because of uni, I come home at the end of the day. If I have to go out for a meal or something with other people and I can't practice my Mandarin, I genuinely become irritable. I feel annoyed, I feel restless, and I want to go home and just watch videos and sit down and practice. It shouldn't require discipline to go and drag yourself to sit down, because if you're doing it, your brain's not approaching it in the right way, in my opinion.
I get what you mean. I'm not sure I entirely agree. Okay, say if you are doing something that's quite, say, a difficult concept in terms of grammar in Mandarin, or you just can't get it, or you keep forgetting particular things, you get frustrated and you just want to leave it at that point. You're like, I've had enough. Don't you require discipline at that point to continue on?
If I reach a point on something that I don't fully understand, I have like a discipline battery. If I can't be bothered to do it, it doesn't mean that I just stop learning altogether for the day. I'll just look at something else. I try and employ discipline as minimally as possible when I'm learning it, because I don't even try to employ discipline. I just want to do it.
Okay.
You know, it's not something that I really think about. So even if I am learning a difficult concept, I don't know, it's still interesting. I haven't experienced that too many times. And also because when I try and memorize things in Mandarin, I don't sit there and look at one phrase and try and repeat it 10 times and understand it. I look at that phrase, I really think about it, I try and put it into context of the language, and then I just move on. And if it's a phrase that's important, it will come up later. And every time it consolidates itself. So a grammatical point, I don't usually really sit down and look at a complex grammatical point. If I'm just exposing myself to the language all the time, I'm hearing that complex grammatical point being applied in so many different contexts that, again, I just sort of get the hang of it. And I need to clarify, I'm not a great Mandarin speaker, definitely. I'd call myself maybe intermediate. I don't know if anyone listening, if you do know the levels, it's probably between HSK level 3 and 4. So I don't want to be preaching here, but it's just that, I don't think you should be employing discipline constantly, because then as soon as you have a bit less motivation, you'll falter. And I don't think that's the point of a passion. If you want to get better, I don't think you should be trying really hard at it. I think you should reach a point where you're just in it and you want to be doing it, and it's almost addictive. You want to keep improving and keep getting the satisfaction from doing it.
Yeah, okay. I think with learning and just languages and then just learning things in general, I think, I get what you mean, because every time I've come across a new thing and I just kind of slowly become obsessed with it, it's just kind of out of chance. It's not, and it's just always on my mind. I just keep thinking about it. So I just learn more about it. But I think, I guess things that most people are trying to do in terms of building habits and improvements and stuff, say diet or going to the gym, doing exercise, going for a run every morning, it probably takes a lot of discipline to force yourself to get out at 5 a.m. to go running in the cold, because that's the only time you can do it. Once you're in it, you'll be enjoying it, but it does require discipline to initiate that motion.
Maybe, again, I'm kind of just I'm gonna die on this hill that I've dug out that I've built myself. I would argue that a true passion, you very, very rarely have to be disciplined. In fact, you more have to be disciplined to not do it. You know, like I won't give an analogy, 'cause I'll keep
I do
repeating
agree.
myself.
I do get where you're coming from on the whole discipline thing, because I think in our willpower episode, I said the whole point is to try and exert less willpower and discipline rather than trying to improve it and make it stronger and use more, because you have to design your lifestyle and do things that you don't need to actually even resist it. Like the whole thing with, I'm not going to buy junk food, so I don't even have to resist the temptation of eating junk food because it's just not in the house. So okay, and that way I don't even have to employ willpower, or discipline or whatever. So okay, I get where you're coming from, but let's just go on to the next one. So man, we're like 5 pages in or something. We are not.
That's fine. We can do half today, half next time, or
half. This is going to be like 7 sections or 7 episodes if we go at this
part
rate.
one of this guy's book.
Yeah, who knows how many parts this is, but it'll be interesting. So okay, now this is the point. Specific knowledge is knowledge you cannot be trained for. If society can train you, it can train someone else and replace you. So specific knowledge is found by pursuing your genuine curiosity and passion rather than whatever is hot right now. So this is kind of the thing you were going on, specific knowledge. So what he's saying is specific knowledge is stuff that you don't get trained for, you don't get taught at school or something. It's just something you just somehow, because you were interested in, you just started learning, and no one else really has that skill, at least in your demographic at that time in location or within your current workplace. So for me, when I was younger, that was video editing and motion design and stuff, visual effects. We aren't taught that at school. I just kind of found it interesting and I just started learning it. The internet, just got into it, and I got to a decent level, I'd like to think, at least. So yeah, I think that was the point you were getting at earlier on about just with your whole cardiology thing. You just found it interesting. You started going down it. You have levels of knowledge in cardiology that people when we were younger didn't have, but you did because you found it interesting. And that can't be taught. So it can't be replaced, really. If someone can teach you how to become an accountant, right, you can just be replaced if you do something wrong and they don't really care. But if you have a special skill set or a specific set of knowledge that the next person just doesn't have, they can't replace you. And that's extremely valuable. That's a high amount of leverage that you can have because that knowledge is transferable, basically. Do you have anything else to add on that?
No, I just think that if you are very passionate about something, you don't have to really even be conscious about it. You don't have to be cerebral about what you're approaching or how much you do it. And in doing that, you are an individual person and there is no one else like you because you've had your own experiences that no one else has ever shared in the exact same way. So if you do what you genuinely enjoy, you will end up with a set of skills that no one else has because the things that you genuinely enjoy will be ever so slightly different from anyone else ever.
Yeah, so the next thing that I had highlighted is when specific knowledge is taught, it's through apprenticeships, not schools. So that's the whole thing where, there's no point going to uni for a carpentry degree or something, just go on an apprenticeship and learn on the job. You learn those skills straight away. So I think that's what it's kind of getting at. Specific knowledge is often highly technical or creative. It cannot be outsourced or automated, or at least not outsourced or automated easily, I'd like to add. He does give a pretty good example later, I think. Let's see if we can find it.
Are these all highlights that you've taken, or is this how the book is?
So the ones that are highlighted are the ones that I've highlighted. So this right now is just going through a Twitter thread that he wrote. But the whole book isn't like this. This is only just this specific section. Just quickly, reading is faster than listening, doing is faster than watching. I think this applies a lot to learning. It's usually quicker to read a book rather than listen to someone talk about it. Unless you're listening at a really high speed, 2-3 times speed, then maybe you're matching it. But a lot of the time, reading is probably faster, and doing is faster than watching. You're going to learn faster by doing it rather than watching it. Although there is value in actually watching it, so you do need to watch it. Like say when I was learning, like trying to perfect my jump shot in basketball, I watched hours and hours of clips of some of the best shooters and broke them down. But then when I actually went onto the court and started practicing, I was applying all of that, and then I would spend hours and hours doing that. But the actual gain in my skill came whilst doing it. I think that's fairly common knowledge. But
I think it's a very inefficient trap that a lot of people find themselves falling into. And again, it ties into the productivity part of things where people look for an answer to something, right?
Yeah.
So you look for, this video is going to change how I shoot the basketball, or this new product is going to change my life. It's going to make me so organized. Or this new course is going to help me learn this language in a way that I've never done it before. But a lot of the time, just doing it, even if you're doing it at 90% efficiency, or 90% of the best way to do it. It's better than just blindly following something else, basically. I don't know really how to explain what I mean here, but it's a productivity trap that I think people fall into, where they rely on an external source of motivation or an external source of guidance, as opposed to just doing something yourself. So like with the jump shot, if you watch a few videos and make sure you're doing the right thing, the rest of it you can figure out yourself. You can get it in your own way. Getting it is a very subjective thing, and it means something different to everyone. The way you get your jump shot, it depends on who you are as a person. So just go out and do it for hours and hours and hours. As long as you're not doing it completely wrong, you will get a lot better, and you'll do it in your own way.
Yeah, because it's all based on fundamentals. Yeah, I'm watching the pros, but they're going to have different levers on their arms. Their arm length to height ratio is going to be different to mine. So I can look at the fundamentals from them and then go from there. It's all about the fundamentals. He talks a lot about fundamentals and root causes later on. So I guess we'll kind of get onto that in later episodes, I guess, at this rate. But so this is the example where he talks about what specific knowledge actually is. So when you meet someone who is natural at sales, you just know they're amazing, they're really good at what they do. That is a form of specific knowledge. Obviously, they learned somewhere, but they didn't learn in the classroom setting. They probably learned in their childhood, in the schoolyard, or they learned negotiating with their parents. Maybe it's some genetic component of DNA. So yeah, it's like those people who are probably going to be good at businesses, they were probably the ones selling sweets at school and stuff and, doing all that business. I mean, they can make a decent amount of money for a kid that age, right? They're the ones who are probably going to have that, entrepreneurial kind of mindset and be willing to hustle and make that side business kind of thing. But you don't just learn that in school. You learn that by actually doing it. And it's just kind of natural to a certain extent. They're like, oh man, I want to make some money. I'll sell some sweets, buy it in bulk. And, that's just the business mindset that they have. And that's the specific knowledge side of it. You learn things from such an early age, just these different weird skill sets and pieces of knowledge. So that's what he's getting at when it can't be taught, but it can be learned, right? And I think that's the key part of specific knowledge.
I think that it's just the sort of thing you have to get. You literally just have to get it. You can read as much as you want in books and you can watch as many tutorials and videos, but some things in life you just have to get in your own way. Something like sales, I don't think you can go around trying to sell a product to lots of different people, deliberately trying to apply 50 or 60 techniques in your mind that you've learned over years of reading and research. You just have to sort of get how the nature of social interactions works with different people and apply it to how you are as a person. So yeah, I really do think a lot of it is just getting things in your own way.
Yeah, okay, so let's try and move off from the specific knowledge part. I'll just say these last two highlights because I think they round up nicely. Specific knowledge is found much more by pursuing your innate talents, your genuine curiosity, and your passion. It's not by going to school for whatever is the hottest job. It's not by going into whatever field investors say is the hottest. If you're not 100% into it, somebody else who is 100% into it will outperform you.
For sure.
And they won't just outperform you by a little bit, they'll outperform you by a lot, because now we're operating in the domain of ideas. Compound interest really applies and leverage really applies. So I think that kind of summarizes all of that nicely.
Again, it's just a case of doing things that you genuinely enjoy.
Yeah, and the most important skill for getting rich is becoming a perpetual learner. You have to know how to learn anything you want to learn. Yep, agree entirely.
Wait, I need to. Can you repeat that?
So it's here. The most important skill for getting rich is becoming a perpetual learner. You have to know how to learn anything you want to learn.
You have to know how to learn anything you want to learn. I really agree with that. Although I wish it wasn't. It shouldn't just be in the context of getting rich or getting financially rich.
Yeah, no, this isn't. This is just about learning in general. But the thing is, a lot of people just have in their mind they want to get rich. Getting rich is not a bad thing. But the way to do it is not by making a quick buck here and there, just following the hottest trend. It's just about learning and making sure that you're learning. And the thing is, people who are perpetual learners just probably all end up being successful and rich for the most part.
I think it ties in again to what we were talking about before with you have to know how to learn anything you want to learn because you have to apply it to your own life. People can guide you on how to hit a certain shot in tennis or how to play a certain piece. But ultimately, let's say there's a piano piece, a 5-minute long piano piece. If I play it to my old piano teacher, she will be able to pick apart anything I do to the point where she can find over 100 things wrong with my piece. And she'll make me play it back to her constantly correcting me on everything I've done. I can either try and memorize those dozens and dozens of corrections, so every time I get up to a point that she's corrected me, try and remember them, or I can really think, is there a theme in her corrections? Honestly here, do you get what I'm saying? I really, really, really passionately think that. In fact, that's almost my approach to learning overall. Don't just do what you've memorized, you've been told to do. With that piece, say she's told me, go slower here, do this bit quieter. I don't want to just in my head be like, okay, this bit I have to go slower, this bit. If I just get the overall concept of the piece, I will do those things naturally. And in fact, I'll do it in my own way. I will apply it to who I am as a person and play it in that way. So again, it's going back to this being a perpetual learner. You have to know how to learn anything you want to learn. With languages, you are your own person. The way you learn is guided a lot by how you've approached, I don't know, motion graphics, web design, all the things that you're interested in. So the way you learn a language will be different to me. If you're reading the same book as me or you're watching the same tutorials, we're not going to pick up the information in the same way. Our brains are wired differently. You have to know yourself if you want to be a good learner.
Yeah, and the key to being a good learner is making sure whatever you're learning, you know the foundations. You have to get the foundations 100%. Otherwise, you won't be able to do really well in whatever that is, whether it's, computer science, coding, or, learning an instrument. You have to nail down the fundamentals, because that's when you can get to that stage of learning where you're picking up those themes and learning, picking up those, actually getting it, right? So this is what it says here. It says, foundations are key. It's much better to be Sorry, I'll start again. Foundations are key. It's much better to be at 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 on foundations than try and get super deep into things. So that's this whole kind of hyper specialization thing where people just focus on one thing and go really far down it and spend their entire life trying to get really good at that one thing, which is good to a certain extent. We do need those hyper specialists, but you can get 90% of the way if you just know the foundations really well, because you will naturally start building on top of that knowledge. And it says you can only achieve mastery in one or two things. It's usually the things you're obsessed about, and I agree with that entirely. To get at the 100% level in any domain, to be the best in the world at that domain, you have to spend your entire life doing that, and you can't spend your entire life becoming the best at 100 different things. 1, 2, 3 maximum probably, but yeah, it's much better to otherwise learn the foundations of everything else, or as much as possible, and only really focus down in a few other things.
So let's just quickly go back to that, because I don't think we're going to have time to go through everything. I'd rather go through things a bit more slowly and really think about it. So right. What was that last one again? Sorry, if you could just grab that up.
So
yeah. Foundations are key. It's much better to be at 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 on foundations than to try and get super deep into things. I think I understand what he's saying there, in that I think another big mistake that people make in learning is seeing the end goal too much, and then you become disillusioned, or maybe a better word is delusional, in that you expect something that's not achievable from it. So maybe in terms of foundations, I understand that you have to understand really the task at hand. A very common thing is that people will say, I want to learn this language over summer, or I want to start learning a language over summer, and they don't end up going out and finishing with it. And I think a big part of that is they don't understand the task at hand. So if what he's saying is foundations are key, because it's better to fully understand what you're in for. So say you're going to learn a language. I know I keep coming back to these ones, but obviously a lot of this is anecdotal. I think it's really important to learn about the language itself at the start, before just diving in and straight going into the language. If you want to learn Spanish, go back and look at the origins of the Spanish language. In fact, look at the history of the Roman Empire. Look at the influences on the language and where it's come from, and if there are any Celtic influences, and the different languages through Spain. It helps you understand the Spanish language a lot better. If you give yourself that sort of foundation, understand where it's spoken around the world, apply yourself, because you're diving in to that culture, that world. It's a different world to the Anglosphere. So you can't just sit there and start learning Spanish words and applying that to your life. You have to put yourself in the mind of a Spanish person, or the history and influence of Spanish culture. So if that's what he means by foundations, whatever you're studying, you need to really understand, what is this? Why do I want to learn this in the first place? Is it because it looks cool? Is it because I want to understand this to give me skills in something else? make sure you really know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then it will become a passion, more likely, because you really understand what you're doing. And the process is more enjoyable, because every day, it's not about that end goal. I'm not learning Spanish to one day be a fluent Spanish speaker and be the best translator in the world. I'm doing it because every day I'm learning something new about Latin America, or I'm learning something new about the different regions of Spain, and why in northwest Spain they speak Galician, and why in northeast Spain they speak Catalan. And then, just a bit west of that and up in the north in the Basque country, they speak a language that has no origin, anything to do with Latin. Why is that? That's how it should be approached, in my opinion. It shouldn't just be approached in a way of, I want to be a good Spanish speaker. So if that's what he means by foundations, then I completely agree. And if that's not what he means, then unfortunately I don't fully understand.
I guess we'll just start wrapping up, since I know you have to go, and we've been talking for a while anyway. So just the last few things on this whole topic of knowledge and stuff. Compound interest also happens in your reputation. Yeah, I agree. Basically just going on about compound interest. He's just trying to hammer home the point of compound interest in every aspect of our lives. He then said, intentions don't matter, actions do. That's why being ethical is hard. Okay, yeah, being ethical is hard, but I don't agree that intentions don't matter. I think intentions are what actually direct your actions and actually get you to actually do what you want to do. So, yeah, I do agree on... Wait, I did write some notes for this.
I guess it depends on what context it's being discussed in. Also, I haven't read this before, so each thing, if we go too quickly, I might not fully understand what was being said. But intentions don't matter, actions do. That's why being ethical is hard. I think I understand in particular context what he means, potentially. Again, it really does depend, doesn't it? Because it doesn't matter if you're, a transnational corporation and you want to be eco-friendly. It doesn't matter if you want to be. It depends on...
You actually have to,
Are you being eco-friendly? Yeah. Intentions are good because it drives action, but ultimately the action is what's important in some way. So I think I get that.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So intentions without action is bad. Because, you can intend something, you can really try, but then if you fail, that doesn't mean your actions failed. You were just learning. So, right, as long as you're actually taking actions to go and fulfill those intentions. But the thing is, you need those intentions to actually direct your actions in the first place. So, yeah, I do get where he's getting at, though. And then 99% of effort is wasted. No, not really. So, well, at least in my opinion. In the context of learning, I don't agree with the fact that...
I don't possibly understand how that can be right. It must be in a particular context, because I don't possibly understand how... So what if you've enjoyed that effort? He's saying it's completely futile, but what if it's something you enjoyed doing?
So it's the classic argument where I think people say, oh, why do I need to know Pythagoras? I'm never going to use that. So that is wasted. So that's the point you're saying, that, yeah, okay, all of these random, really complex calculus stuff that you're never going to use if you're going into medicine are probably wasted, right? But I don't think they are wasted, because you don't even know when some of that random knowledge is going to come in handy, right? And some of the fundamental things you might learn from learning these weird complex things in physics or maths or something. I'm using physics and maths as an example because a lot of people say, oh, why do I need to learn this in physics or maths and stuff? I don't need to know about atoms and particles. But later on in life, when you start getting a high level in anything, you probably actually do start using that knowledge without you even knowing.
At face value, it might be wasted, but I don't agree with that at all. In fact, this might just be some pure naivety, but I don't think anything you learn is wasted, because you may have learned that you don't like that, or there's always something to gain from everything you do. Every single event that's ever happened in your life, you can learn from and will change you as a person. So no effort is purely wasted, because I don't think that concept exists. Maybe it was wasted in the context of what you were aiming towards. Say you want to be a millionaire and you put loads of effort into a certain company and then it crashes. Okay, maybe your goal of becoming a millionaire, that time you spent on that was arguably wasted, but you will have learned a lot from it. Yeah, and I think that's common knowledge. So I must not be understanding what he means. Maybe if he was on the call, he would be explaining himself right now.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. So he said an example is all the people you dated until you met your husband or wife. It was wasted time in the goal sense, not wasted in the exponential sense, not wasted in the learning sense, but definitely wasted in the goal sense.
Okay, so that's what we're saying.
Yeah, okay.
It's the goal. Okay, if you're doing it in the context of the goal, then whether it be your business, love, or whatever, fine. But nothing is wasted in life.
I think that's just a bit of a, random point. But yeah, that's basically it on the knowledge part. We tried to skim through it. We kind of got carried away in some parts. But yeah, it starts going on to accountability, but we'll leave that for the next time. And yeah, we'll probably have a lot to say about that. We kind of went off tangent, but I think that was all right. We'll leave it there and we'll maybe look at the rest of this book later.
Hopefully. It was interesting. I need to look up a bit about him. So his name is Naval Ravikant.
Yeah, I recommend reading this book. It's basically free. You can actually get it for free from their website. It's a pretty easy read as well. You can flick through it very quickly. And it's a very, short snippet kind of book. So I definitely recommend reading it. We'll put the link in the show notes. But with that, we'll just leave it there. All right. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Getting It.
If you enjoyed this episode,
or didn't,
then feel free to leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcasts app or on the Apple Podcasts website.
We'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas, or questions about anything we discussed, so feel free to email us at thoughts@gettingit.co.uk.
You can also reach us on Twitter or Instagram at gettingit_pod.
You can find all the links in the show notes.